What's up, addicts? In this video, we're going to be doing a fantasy recap of the Dallas Renegades and Seattle Dragons game from Week 3. Hey, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Alright guys, so as I said, breaking down the Renegades and Dragons. Final score in this one, Renegades 24, Dragons 12. This was pretty much the exact same scenario that we've seen from the Renegades in Week 2 and 3 now, and then the Dragons basically doing the same thing in Week 1 and 3, where they start the game out pretty strong, their offense looks good, and then they just completely sputter in the second half. You know, tons of drives that just end with no points being scored, lack of motivation towards the end. Pretty disappointing because it felt like, for the most part of this game, that the Dragons definitely had it within their control and should have been able to come out with a victory. But Renegades steal another game on the road in this one right now. The Renegades are 2-0 on the road. Definitely a good start for their season, picking up after that home loss without Landry Jones. Now, looking at the player stats here from a fantasy perspective, Landry Jones did really well, considering some of the other poor performances for quarterbacks this week. 30 of 41, 274 yards, also had 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Definitely could have done without those. Also had a fumble on the day, but overall looked pretty good. The running backs on the ground killing it again. Cameron Artis-Payne still continuing his dominance. 13 carries, 80 yards, including a 31-yard long run. Also had 6 targets, 6 receptions, and 30 yards. Massive fantasy day, even without touchdowns. He performed very well. And then Lance Dunbar, 8 carries on the ground, 23 yards. We see his average per carry dip quite drastically here. It was averaging around 6 up to this point, but 11 targets and 9 receptions for 56 yards. These guys are the focal points of the offense and have been getting it done very consistently. Both are incredible values in fantasy right now. For the receivers, we saw Jeff Badet have a very disappointing day. 4 targets, only 2 catches for 13 yards, similar to his Week 1 output. I do expect better days ahead for Badet, but this was quite disappointing, and his value is definitely going to drop. Flynn Nagel here ended up getting the most targets and receptions from a receiver standpoint. 5 receptions, 39 yards, did have that first touchdown for Landry Jones. Jazz Ferguson played this game, 3 targets, 2 catches for 19 yards. No one else here really worth mentioning, at least from a receiver. But on a tight end side, oh my gosh, Donald Parham is still looking fantastic out there. 7 targets, 5 catches, and 101 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. That left no room for Sean Bryce. He had 1 catch for 0 yards. I'm sorry, 1 target, no catches for 0 yards. So Donald Parham continues his tight end dominance. If you play in a league where you have tight ends, he is by far the most valuable tight end. There's no one even close. But Donald Parham is worth rostering and playing even in leagues that you don't have tight ends. He's just that good right now. He did leave the game briefly for an injury, but he came right back and scored, so hopefully there's nothing serious there. Alright, looking at the Dragons, and real quick before we get into the stats there, if you guys are actually looking for a replay of this game, you want to see a condensed version of it with all the fluff cut out, make sure you click the link either in the description or above me. Anyway, let's get to the Dragons. Brandon Silvers looked a lot better this week than he did last week. Definitely had some more mobility. He was dealing with that ankle injury last week. 21 of 34, 204 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 INT on the day. Definitely could have been a little bit sharper in the second half. We continue to see a 3-headed monster for the running backs here. Jaquan Gardner with 8 attempts, 37 yards. Trey Williams, 8 attempts for 33 yards. Also had 4 targets and 3 receptions on the day for 21 yards. And then Kenneth Farrow, only 6 attempts for 14 yards on the ground, but he ended up having a decent day because of 3 targets, 3 receptions, 25 yards, and that touchdown on through the air for Kenneth Farrow. So basically continuing again, Jaquan Gardner had 3 targets. He had no receptions. 1 he caught out of bounds, one-handed, was really a nice grab, but then he had 2 drops near the end of the game, so definitely their worst back in terms of their receiving potential. Trey Williams and Kenneth Farrow will continue to maintain some more value there because of that. Alright, jumping over to the receivers, we saw the resurgence of Austin Proehl again. 7 targets, 6 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown. Keenan Reynolds got the same amount of targets, but only 4 catches for 37 yards. He did have multiple end zone targets and a deep shot that definitely could have given him a better day, but you know, just it's going to be see some back and forth between these guys. I still think Keenan Reynolds will continue to hold more value going forward. Alonzo Moore also there, 5 targets, 3 receptions for 28 yards. No other receivers to mention, and then the tight ends just continue to underwhelm in Seattle. Connor Hamlet with 1 catch for 7 yards, and Evan Rodriguez 1 catch for 5 yards. So really nothing there from a tight end perspective. But this game kind of went how we expected. The Renegades, their offense continued to roll. Still started out a little bit slow, but once it picked up, it kept going, and the Dragons weren't able to slow them down. But I think there's a lot of promise for both of these teams going forward from here. Even though the Dragons lost, I think there's a lot of good things to look forward to. But that West division in the XFL is starting to look pretty competitive now, with the Wildcats surging. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll be posting a bunch of updates to our website in terms of getting you ready for Week 4 and giving some new insights into how we can look at the game. So make sure you check that out on FantasyAddictionNetwork.com and hit that like and subscribe button for more XFL content every single day. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.